And mainly during the last 2 years, but even before that, Turkey led by Erdogan, led hostile approach against Israel, included not only hostile statements, but also diplomatic and economic measures against Israel. So it is not reasonable for us to let their armed forces enter to Gaza Strip, and we will not agree to that, and we said it to our American friends. But to Turkey, why we are against the participation of Turkey in Gaza? So I would say that countries that once are ready to send armed forces should be at least fair to Israel. They shouldn't be so supportive maybe, but they shouldn't be hostile to Israel.
Comment on, will you allow Prime Minister Turkish security personnel to get inside Gaza?
Well, I want to put it very clearly. You know, 1 week they say that Israel controls the United States. A week later they say the United States controls Israel. This is hogwash. We have a partnership, an alliance of partners who share common values, common goals. We can have discussions, we can have disagreements here and there, but on the whole, I have to say that in the past year we've had agreement, not only on goals, but how to reach them. And I think we're pursuing them successfully. We've been able to do two things. Put the knife at Hamas's throat. That was the military effort guided by Israel. And the other effort was to isolate Hamas in the Arab and Muslim world, which I think the president did brilliantly with his team. So those two things produced the hostages. Nobody believed we'd get them out.
Mr. Prime Minister, will you allow Turkey
on the
to
question of the Turks, I think we called the Vice President yesterday. He said that I have very strong opinions on that. And he also said we have to do it with, Israel will be obviously decide together who does that. So I have very strong opinions about that. You want to guess what they are?
Vice President, can you comment on whether Washington is directing Israel's decision?
I would address that. So, look, we don't want in Israel, we don't want a vassal state, and that's not what Israel is. We don't want a client state, and that's not what Israel is. We want a partnership. We want an ally here. And the president believes very strongly that if Israel honestly, with our Gulf Arab allies, can play a very positive leadership role in this region, to where, frankly, the United States can care less about the Middle East because our allies in the region are giving up and taking control and taking ownership of their area of the world. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have interests here. That doesn't mean we don't care about what happens here. But we actually see this as an opportunity to build on the Abraham Accords. I think this Gaza deal is a critical piece of unlocking the Abraham Accords. But what it could allow is an alliance structure in the Middle East that perseveres, that endures, and that allows the good people in this region of the world to step up and take ownership of their own backyard. That's in the United States' best interest. I happen to think that it's in Israel's best interest too. I would address that. So, look, we don't want in Israel, we don't want a vassal state, and that's not what Israel is. We don't want a client state, and that's not what Israel is. We want a partnership. We want an ally here. And the president believes very strongly that if Israel honestly, with our Gulf Arab allies, can play a very positive leadership role in this region, to where, frankly, the United States can care less about the Middle East because our allies in the region are giving up and taking control and taking ownership of their area of the world. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have interests here. That doesn't mean we don't care about what happens here. But we actually see this as an opportunity to build on the Abraham Accords. I think this Gaza deal is a critical piece of unlocking the Abraham Accords. But what it could allow is an alliance structure in the Middle East that perseveres, that endures, and that allows the good people in this region of the world to step up and take ownership of their own backyard. That's in the United States' best interest. I happen to think that it's in Israel's best interest too.
Vice President Vance, you say that the ceasefire isn't on the verge of collapse, but why is it that the president said
Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, now yourself, and then Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Israel this week, if that's not the case. And if I could, you said that there were joint agreements between the two of you today. Could you please explain what those were?
Well, to answer your question, look, this thing takes monitoring and it's going to take a lot of work. I was in the CMCC, which we opened up yesterday. A lot of our Israeli friends working together with a lot of Americans to actually mediate this entire ceasefire process, to get some of the critical infrastructure off the ground, from the international security force to some of the reconstruction of Gaza. It's not easy. I never said it was easy, but what I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East. But that requires some work. So it's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work, and it's important for the principals and the administration to keep on ensuring that our people are doing what we need them to do.
Mr. Vice President, how do you
Do you
ensure...
have a comment on the foreign countries not willing to send troops to Gaza, afraid of Hamas?
Please let the Prime Minister answer the question.
The first thing I'd say is, I would just to the previous question, that when it comes to Israel's security, we do what we have to do. Right? That's always the case. That's not a question. But America has an interest in a strong Israel, as you just heard from the Vice President. And Israel has an interest in a strong America. America has other interests in this region. Where we can be flexible to accommodate that, that's good, because a strong America is in our interest. And equally, as you just heard the Vice President say again, a strong Israel serves America's interest in stabilizing this very unstable region. And you can't stabilize it without a strong Israel. So we make the decisions for the security of Israel, but we make common decisions for the region, which I think can serve us both. And that's what we discussed today. We discussed this idea of the day after. Remember, everybody said you don't have a day after, you don't have a day after. We're just creating an unbelievable day after with a completely new vision of how to have the civil government, how to have the security there. Who could provide that security there? Again, with Israel taking care of overall security always. And we discussed that. And I think we have some very, very good ideas how to proceed. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, a plan and an infrastructure here where nothing existed even a week and a day ago. That's going to require a lot of work. It requires a lot of ingenuity. But again, I just, having seen what's already been built in just the past 7 days, I think that we're on an incredible pathway here to do something that has never been done. And I think you've heard Steve Witkoff say this, you've heard the President, I believe, say this, that if we do this the right way, it could create a model, I think, that could lead to other peace agreements all over the world, because it shows what's possible when you're willing to think outside the box and actually put some elbow grease to get it done.
The administration repeatedly says Hamas must disarm or face obliteration, but Hamas is consistently refusing to do that. How does it look like this is going to be resolved?
Well, Ephraim, immediately it looks like the only force available and close enough to Hamas would be the IDF. They would have to go back over the yellow line and go into areas that they once controlled and go ahead and disarm Hamas violently. Although President Trump put out a post on Truth Social that there are other nations in the region that are eager to go ahead and disarm. The concern for some is, who are those nations and what kind of agenda do they have, maybe to go in and take over, disarm Hamas, and what do they want to do in Gaza after that? That's a concern for many people, Ephraim. But right now, it looks like the IDF would be the only ones to be able to go in and do the job of disarming Hamas.
If Hamas has 20,000 fighters in Gaza, could that mean another long period of warfare to ultimately defeat them?
It really could be 20,000. Many people are just surprised that Hamas has been able to replenish the tens of thousands, actually, a few, maybe 20 to 30,000 fighters that the IDF has killed in the last 2 years, but they continue to be able to recruit of the population. So that is a big concern, that they would just continue to be able to go ahead and fight any force, whether it comes in. The big change, Ephraim, right now is that Israel would not go in with living hostages inside Gaza. That has been a big concern for them and has prevented them from going into areas where they knew the living hostages were. So that would make a big difference if they do go back in and try to disarm and defeat Hamas.
Vice President Vance says no construction funds will go to parts of Gaza controlled by Hamas. How much of Gaza does Hamas have control of, and have most people in Gaza turned against Hamas?
Well, I would say we know that the IDF controls 53% of the Gaza Strip, so that puts Hamas in control of 47% of the Gaza Strip. But the question, are they turning against Hamas? It's a very difficult question to answer, Ephraim, because we don't get necessarily, free speech in Gaza. Many people are afraid, intimidated to speak out against Hamas. It could mean, they could get shot, they could have their legs broken, they could be killed. So that's very hard to distinguish. But we do understand anecdotally that many Gazans are not only afraid, but they are very upset with Hamas. Look what they've done in 2 years. Really, the IDF has had to go in and destroy what had been the largest terror base in the world, with subterranean tunnels more than 400 miles long and weapons in many of the buildings there. So many people are upset with Hamas, but they really can't say so publicly, especially as with, in Julie's report, this 1,000 that goes out and enforces Hamas's rule there in about 47% of the Gaza Strip.
Why is it important to prevent Qatar and Turkey from gaining influence over Gaza?
Agenda, Ephraim, and it's telling that just about a month ago, Erdogan was in the parliament of Turkey, and the members in the parliament was saying, "Take us to Gaza," telling Erdogan that. And he said, "I will take you to Gaza." Now, the question is, in this peace plan that was signed by Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, and the United States, is there some provision in there that Turkey will be allowed to go in? Remember, Erdogan wants to reestablish this Ottoman Empire, like this neo-Ottoman Empire that spread throughout the Middle East. He wants to restore it. He has his sights set on Jerusalem as well. So any footprint in the Gaza Strip for many people would be quite concerning. And if Turkey goes in there with the idea of disarming Hamas, but then having a long-term agenda of getting a foothold right there next to Israel.
If there is an international effort to rebuild Gaza, then who will rule it? And is that part of phase 2 of President Trump's peace plan?
Well, it is part of phase 2. Who's going to rule it? Well, we understand that the Board of Peace that would be chaired by President Trump, I think that is the idea that who would rule over Gaza. The ISF, this International Stabilization Force, would also play a role, hopefully, when Hamas is finally disarmed. And that would be sort of the next step. But we also understand that perhaps the Palestinian Authority either wants or may be given some sort of, influence there in Gaza that as if they reform, that's the key. A lot of people don't believe that the Palestinian Authority could reform in such a way that they would be have their own agenda of reasserting their control over the Gaza Strip. Remember, Ephraim, they had it at one time. They had it from 2005 to 2007. They controlled the Gaza Strip, and then it was taken over by Hamas. So that's a big question. Is it going to be this Board of Peace chaired by President Trump? And then enforced by this International Stabilization Force. And the question we have mentioned before, will Jews be allowed to go back into the Gaza Strip? 9,000 were evicted forcibly in 2005. The Bible says that land was given at one time to the tribe of Judah. And what role could the Jewish people have in a post-war Gaza remains to be seen.